Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to a very special edition of NHL Wraparound presented by UBS Financial Services, Inc. Vic Morren with you, and very shortly I will be joined by my good friend and partner on the show, Neil Smith. On January 30th, 2024, we had our first wraparound with the great one, Wayne Gretzky. This show represents our 100th wraparound, and Neil, just like Gretz, we decided to go right to the top.
Absolutely. Such an honor to have the commissioner of the NHL, Gary Bettman, on this show.
We're going to hit such a wide array of topics, and hopefully our listeners will come out of this just having a greater knowledge and a greater insight to everything that the commissioner has to say.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get started on it, and I hope everybody out there really enjoys this one.
So with that, let's welcome in NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman.
My extreme pleasure and honor to bring into our show the commissioner of the National Hockey League, who has been the longest reigning commissioner of any major league sport, and that is Gary Bettman. Gary, thank you so much for doing this. It's our 100th episode. Our first episode was January of 24, January 30th. Wayne Gretzky was gracious enough to be our first guest. And we together thought there was only one person we wanted for our 100th show, and that was you. And we thank you for doing it.
That's very nice. What were you looking for, the oldest person you could find? Seriously, congratulations on 100 shows. That's just terrific. And thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Neil.
Thank you. I want to start, Gary, just talking about something I don't hear many people talk about, and that's just your background growing up in Queens and so on, and hockey and where it came into your life and so on. I think there's a big misconception out there that you weren't a hockey fan, and I'd love to clear that up.
I grew up in Queens, for the most part, New York City. I am a product of the New York City public school system. I went to Cornell University and NYU Law School. Growing up, I frequently used my GO card, which you got from the New York City public schools, to go to Madison Square Garden for, I think at the time, 50 cents. And I would go to see Rangers games and bring my dinner, a sandwich with me in a brown paper bag, and do my homework because it was general admission. So you wanted to get there early as soon as they opened the doors. And then you probably had an hour and a half or 2 hours to wait for the start of the game. And, you know, I grew up as a typical kid in New York City. And so, you know, I had my favorite football team, my favorite baseball team, my favorite basketball team, and my favorite hockey team, although that was before the Islanders came into being. So it was the Rangers. But my real attachment to hockey as my primary focus started when I was an undergraduate at Cornell. In those days, Cornell was an elite collegiate hockey power, particularly in an era when there wasn't a lot of elite college sports in the Ivy League competitively. And I was there, I think, 1 or 2 years after Cornell had come off its undefeated championship season in hockey, which was a first at the time. You had to be a season ticket holder, basically, to get to the hockey games at Liner Rink. And to get season tickets, you had to go to Hockey Line and sleep out for 2 nights. So there was a real passionate fan base, and you really couldn't be a casual fan if you wanted to do it. You had to be pretty avid.
In those days, did you ever happen to meet Ken Dryden at Cornell or John Hughes?
They were older than me, and so they were gone before I got there. People tend to think Ken was the goaltender for the undefeated season, and he wasn't. It was, I believe, Brian Cropper who was. But most people associate Ken with that. But everybody at Cornell who had any interest in hockey knew about Ken Dryden for obvious good reason.
And, of course, John Hughes, who happened to be my attorney when he was still alive, was the captain of the Cornell team way back then. And his daughter was Sarah Hughes, went on to win the gold medal.
And I believe then went to law school and as a practicing lawyer. And I know that because I was honored at a luncheon last week, and Sarah happened to be there and came up, and we had a nice chat. And I was actually in Salt Lake City in I think was then the Delta Center, although they don't call that during the Olympics, the night she won the gold medal. The hockey for the day concluded, and I was able to secure the tickets to see the women's gold medal figure skating. So I was actually there when she won it.
And that was a stunner back then because she wasn't expected to win the gold medal, and it was a fabulous day for the Hugheses. I looked at your background more than I ever have before, and I got to ask you this. Did you ever think when you were a kid that you'd end up running something nuttier than your father ran?
That's a very punny question. My father and his brother ran the Bettman Nut Company, edible nuts, not nuts and bolts. My dad passed away when he was 40, and my uncle didn't have a whole lot of success running the company on his own, and maybe it lasted another 10 or 15 years. So yes, there was a connection to nuts, and that was something that was the subject of a fair amount of joking as I was growing up. Now, having said that, no, did I ever think I'd be doing this? That would make me nuts if I thought as a kid that I'd be doing this. But, for a lawyer from a big law firm, having a non-traditional trajectory into something that is really fun, interesting, relevant, it was always a great opportunity once I had it to get into sports. And so, yeah, that's a pretty good piece of trivia you picked up there, Mr. Smith.
Well, you remember my punny dad joke ways, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, and you reminded me vividly with that question.
Gary, you worked at the NBA for quite a while. We won't go through all the positions you had, but you worked under the great David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, who was one of the best commissioners ever. Can you say the things that you took away from him that you were able to bring to the job that you hold now or that you've held for such a long time?
That's a great question. So a little bit of background. David and I both came out of the Proskauer law firm. David was a young partner when I was a young associate. We knew each other. I had done some work with him, and I had left Proskauer, and I was looking to do something else. At about the same time, David was being promoted from general counsel to executive vice president of the NBA, and that was in 1981, and they were looking for a young lawyer. At the time, David, when he was general counsel, had an assistant general counsel named Russ Granick, and Russ was moving up to general counsel when David was becoming executive vice president. He was basically like the chief operating officer, and they were looking for a young lawyer with about my number of years of experience and background, and David knew me from Proskauer, and they offered me the opportunity to join them. And to put it in context, this was 1981. I was the 25th employee, including support staff. So sports leagues were nothing like they are now. We've all morphed into major media companies, licensing, sponsorship, promotions, marketing, and media, both the traditional media in those days and then everything else that's been going on, including things like podcasts. And so I went there, and for 12 years I was there. David, Russ, and I spent more time with each other, the three of us running everything, doing things that had never been done, whether it was a salary cap or a drug program or the morphing of the business into more sophisticated businesses than they were. And as I said, we spent more time with each other than we did with our families for those 12 years. That was the beginning of sports leagues becoming major media companies, major marketing companies. And so that was the beginning. And I think that was my being there, part of what made me attractive to the NHL owners when they were looking for somebody to take over after John Ziegler.
Gary, as part of you coming on board, officially assuming the role on February 1st, 1993, was to continue to grow the game. And the league has grown from 24 to 32, technically 33 if we include the dormant team in Arizona right now. But
by the way, there is no dormant team in Arizona. So let's be clear. We're 32, and there is no team in Arizona, dormant or otherwise.
Okay, fair enough. But now, given the difficulty of winning one Stanley Cup, is there a balance that you see in growing into other markets, perhaps even into Europe? How much is too much and too good for the league in terms of the number of clubs that are able to participate?
That's a terrific question. And I don't think there's any shortage of hockey talent. And in fact, the talent level of our game is probably greater than it's ever been with the collection of young stars we have. And when you think about it, we've just seen a season with Ovechkin and Crosby, the senior members of the varsity. And then you've got McKinnon, you've got McDavid, you got Matthews, who are veterans with a fair number of years of experience, not quite at the same age range as the Crosbys and the Ovechkins. And then you've got Bedard, Celebrini, Matthews. And so there's no shortage of players spanning the generations. The talent level is right. And if you look at what's been going on, not only has the game been never more competitive, and I think our competitive balance is the best of any sport, but when you look at the quality of the game and the entertainment that the game provides and the skill level of the players, that's great. If you're looking from an impact standpoint and expansion, keep in mind that of our 32 teams, we have 7 in Canada. Yep. We're tripled up in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, and we're doubled up in Southern California. So our footprint from a major national media and sponsorship standpoint is a little more limited, has been historically, and it was even more so then than the other 3 major sports. What we've been able to do is create more of a national footprint in the United States. You're seeing it in our ratings. You're seeing it in our national sponsorship. And perhaps as importantly, if you ask USA Hockey, you're seeing it in the participation of young people and older people in organized hockey. When we have a team in a new place, registrations for hockey explode. Boys, girls, men, women, all ages. And so being in more places has actually helped us grow the game.
Wanted to move over a little bit to player safety because as we have seen, and you grew up watching the game in the 50s, I started watching in the 60s, and the game has always looked fast as years have gone on. But the truth is now the game has never been faster. The players have never been bigger. But the rink has stayed 200 by 85 since it became standardized in 1929. So we're talking 97 years now. The average player in 29 was about 5'8", 5'9", 172. And that player now is 6'1.5" and 201 pounds. So we've obviously seen more contact in smaller space than it's been. And even Team USA and Rangers current head coach Mike Sullivan has said the rinks are too small for today's player now. I want to see if you agree, disagree.
Yeah.
What is your stance on that?
I disagree, and I think most people disagree. First of all, based on the speed and skill of our players, they make their own rule. And, this is a game of time and space. There are people who've said because of the rules that we have in place and the way we officiate, that the game is less physical than it's been. I don't buy that either.
Great.
But I will tell you, and I think the International Ice Hockey Federation and the International Olympic Committee agree, they've gone to NHL ice away from the international surface. The international surface, I think, makes the game slower, less offensive. It gives you an easier time to defend the goal because you can keep the players further away from it on offense. I think our game is succeeding exactly for the reasons that we've talked about, the skill of the player and the size of the ice. Player safety is vitally important to us, and we have a whole department. We were the first league to ever do that. And so whether it's equipment or the way the game is officiated or the rules or how we protect heads, I don't think the game's ever been safer. And I think the game is physical, but player safety remains a priority. But I don't think going to bigger ice would enhance the game. If anything, I think it would slow it down in ways that would make it less compelling than it is right now.
Gary, on another subject, which is now referred to in the modern day as load management. I don't quite get these terms. I don't know if you and I have ever spoken about this in the past, but John Ziegler once berated me at a GM meeting because I said something about, well, maybe they'll rest some players at the end. And he said, he went into, you're never allowed to do that. You got to play your best lineup every single night you can. And I was like, oh, I was really young, as you know, Gary, back then. And, it sort of scared me like, oh, geez, we better not ever do that. But today with 32 teams and the way that some teams, have a great regular season, they get to near the end, their position is completely solidified. They start to rest some players, which many people say is their right. But other teams that they may be playing could be trying to get into the playoffs. They could be trying to jump over another team. And it seems sort of unfair that they get to play against a weaker team to some people. I just wanted your stance on that.
I know there's, quote, load management in other sports, but you don't see that in the NHL. Our players go out and play hard every night, and our teams, ice the most competitive team they have. Yes, towards the end of the season, most of our teams have players nursing injuries. And so while they might force themselves to play if it was a critical game the last week or so, for the most part, our players go all out because you also know that our game is a game of momentum and it's hard to turn it on and off. So if you think you're going to sit your best players for 2 weeks or a month, you're not going to get it back for the playoffs. So no, I don't think load management's an issue, and our guys will play more tired, more banged up than the athletes in any other sport on a consistent basis. And our players and our coaches are too passionate about what happens on the ice night in and night out. So I don't think that's ever been an issue for us. And as you know, our players, will play injured more perhaps than any other sport, and the rigors of going through the playoffs and how grueling it is. So no, injury is one thing. Load management, I don't believe that's the case.
Well, I know one thing about hockey players: they hate to miss games.
Of course.
You know what? A lot of them hate to even miss a practice, let alone a game, because that's what you do. That's your life is hockey. So
and that's why I gave you the answer I did.
Yeah, we're in total agreement there. I wanted to ask you about a very positive thing, which is your relationship now, the league's relationship with the NHLPA, Marty Walsh. You've got a current agreement that goes till 2030. It hasn't always been that way. You and I both know that it was very difficult at times with Marty Walsh's predecessors. Can you comment on your relationship? Because it's so positive now, or it seems that way from the outside.
No, Marty's been great. Listen, He knows what he's doing. He's smart. He knows the ropes. He ran unions in Massachusetts. He was the mayor of Boston. He was the Secretary of Labor for the United States during the Biden administration. He is the consummate professional. On a personal level, I think we have a very good, cordial, constructive relationship. He understands how to work together for the benefit of the business and for the players. He's passionate about representing the players, and he'll do everything he has to represent them on issues that are important to the players. But we have a very constructive relationship from a working standpoint, which is the reason that we've been able to bring back the World Cup. It's the reason we're able to do 4 nations. It's the reason the players are back at the Olympics. He gets the importance of working together on the important issues because that's good for everyone. But at the same time, he will not for a second stand the players being taken advantage of. To the contrary, he is a fierce advocate for them. I think we have a relationship of mutual respect. I think we genuinely like each other, but that makes for open communication and trust, which is vital for any relationship and different than anything I've experienced in my 3 prior decades of doing this.
A reminder, this is NHL Wraparound presented by UBS Financial Services, Inc. Now, let's return to our conversation with NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman. You talk about communication being so important, and so much of that obviously is the obligation to the media. I have spent 40 years of my life in television. Neil has also been behind the mic. You have been so gracious to not only join us, but you never seem to turn down an interview. And so when you levied the big fine and the docking of a draft pick to the Vegas Golden Knights after their series against Anaheim, that opened up a lot of eyes because that was the most serious media violation that we have ever seen. And I think it just goes to show how much you value the people that cover our game.
I think I would agree with what you said in terms of how I value the media. I don't seek the media opportunities. I don't go out and ask my communications people to find opportunities. I understand that being in this role, you need to be accessible. You need to be accountable. You need to be transparent. And that's why I do these things the way I do them. In the case of what happened with the Golden Knights, we have a discussion with all the clubs before each round of the playoffs that are participating. They all know the media regs. They've all been around it enough to know what their responsibilities and obligations are. When there have been violations, they've been warned, and enough was enough. And I think actually Kelly McCrimmon, the GM of Vegas, said it best when he said, putting aside the league issues and wanting our players and our game and our coaches to be more accessible, the Golden Knights missed an opportunity after a big win and closing out a series in the second round. They missed an opportunity to talk to their fans and connect with their fans at an important time. Being accessible, having the game accessible is important. And, you know, in addition, if we look the other way for one club, then all the other clubs are going to say, why are we doing it? Mm-hmm. And so finally, we had enough. And we made it clear, you got to do what we expect you to do. And there are no surprises. There are no secrets. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And we use the conference calls before each round to raise consciousness and remind people that this is an important part of what we all do.
I think the money part of that is always the lesser punishment. The draft pick really opened my eyes. I can tell you, I thought, wow, they're very serious now because there's nothing more valuable to the teams than a draft pick.
Well, and in fact, Kelly and George McPhee and John Tortorella were in my office on Tuesday morning to discuss it. That's how important it was. And I'm sure at this particular time in the playoffs, They weren't all that excited about flying cross country in one day, but this is important stuff. And I know that there's nothing more important to all of them and everybody in that organization to take another run at the cup. But it's more than what just takes place on the ice. We all, as part of this game, have a broader responsibility, particularly to the media that cover the game so well.
Gary, I wanted to bring up another thing. I haven't been in the league, as you know, for a while, and I was a scout for many, many years. Really enjoyed that, being chief scout of Detroit and with the Islanders. And one of the things I enjoyed the most, of course, was going to the draft and seeing everybody from all over the league all in one place at one time. And now that you've gone to a decentralized draft, can you talk about that and why and what you see as the benefit of doing that?
Well, the why is simply the clubs wanted it. And, ultimately we try to be responsible to the club's desires. And maybe it's post-COVID and the use of Zoom and technology to do things remotely. Maybe it's the fact that there's more technology and more people involved in analytics, that clubs were more comfortable doing their business in their home facilities. But overwhelmingly, the clubs told us they wanted to do it from home and have us run the draft the same way the NFL and the NBA do it, where the clubs are at home and there's a central location where you announce the picks that are called in and the prospects are there. So we're continuing to do that, and it continues to be a big event. It was interesting. We made the announcement we were going to do it. The last centralized draft, I happen to like the centralized draft. I also like the practice that we had, that each club would come up and announce its pick their own way. Yeah, I thought that was a nice touch, but this is what the clubs wanted. But anyway, we did the last centralized draft in the Sphere in Vegas, and we were the first live event out of the Sphere, and it was a big deal, and everybody loved it. And then there was maybe we made a mistake, maybe we didn't. And then we did it decentralized, and then we took another vote, and everybody, not quite as many, but still overwhelmingly, the clubs wanted to continue doing it decentralized. So that's what we're going to do. We'll have a nice event in Buffalo in June this year. The prospects will be there. We'll do something special for the fans who will attend. But, my view is we'll do whatever the clubs want. We can manage this either way. Steve Mayer and his events people are very agile in putting on events, whether it's the draft or the outdoor games or what have you. But, we'll make it work. This is what the teams have told us they want, notwithstanding the fact that the players' prospects are with us in the first instance.
Gary, a couple before we let you go. Your legacy is secure, but we all have expiration dates at some point, and we're not putting an end point on it by any means. But as you continue to look forward, what are the most important pieces of business that you look at that you want to achieve in the coming years?
Well, it's never one thing. Yes, everybody has an expiration date. And as I approach my 74th birthday, I know I'm not going to do this forever, even though I love what I do, and I get energized every morning coming in to do the work that we all do here together. And we have a great organization, and I have terrific support from the clubs, particularly from ownership. The big issues, CBA, well, we just did an extension a year early. We had the discussion about Marty Walsh. I recently did a national deal in Canada, and one in the U.S. is coming up in the next couple of years. And ultimately, for any CEO, which is, I guess, what a commissioner is, you need to provide for an orderly succession. And at the appropriate time, I'll discuss that with the owners as well. But, I know there's been some speculation, including we've been getting calls recently from people suggesting I'm about to announce that I'm retiring after this year's playoffs, which is categorically untrue. But, we want to keep the trains running on time on the tracks and keep the game growing. That is the priority and always has been. We want to be a welcoming sport, whether you're a player or a fan, and we want more and more people to appreciate how great this great game is.
Well, who would want to retire with probably the best presentation that anybody gets in sports, and that's presenting the Stanley Cup. And in June, you will going to be presenting for the 32nd time, because you didn't obviously award a trophy in 2005 because of the lockout, in 2022 because of COVID. But the first time you presented the Stanley Cup was in 1993, the Montreal Forum.
Yes, it was.
Right? And you had broken from tradition of all of your predecessors who would merely come out onto the ice and they would hand the cup to the captain, and that would be it. And you took the mic in the Forum. And what surprised me was CBC was totally unprepared for it because they were in the middle of an interview with Denny Savard. ESPN was ready. And what really struck me was the first words that you uttered to present the Stanley Cup was actually done in French.
You know, most people don't know or remember that. A couple of things. One, I felt that even though there was a practice of me getting booed in visiting buildings, giving the cup, there's nothing better that I get to do than present the Stanley Cup. It is an incredible honor. I can't even begin to give it the full explanation of what it is, other than here I am presenting the most coveted trophy, the most important trophy, the most iconic trophy in all of sports. I felt it needed a personal touch, not just a PA announcement and hand it over. And since I was doing it in Montreal, I felt I needed to respond appropriately. Even though I don't speak French, I learned the sentence that afternoon so that I could do what I had to do. But again, most people didn't hear it. Most people didn't know it. Most people didn't expect it. And most people don't remember that. You guys really did a lot of homework on this. But again, I want to give it the right touch, and then I want to get out of the way, because the presentation isn't about me. It's about being there with the players and the coaches and the support staff that make it so special. It's the hardest trophy to win. Our playoffs are the most rigorous. And to me, as great an honor as it is to present the cup, to be that close to the players who have just won it, to see in their eyes what they've been through and the sense of adulation and excitement and accomplishment that they have. And you don't get that quite as much on television. Yeah. That's why it's the best thing I get to do.
Gary, being selfish, I thought your best presentation was actually the next year.
Yeah, Mark Messier probably feels the same way too. Although, you see the iconic picture of him jumping up and down holding the cup. All you see is my hands.
Yes.
I was cropped out, but that's okay because it's not about me.
We didn't have this on the script to ask you this. I just have to ask you. Growing up in Queens, going to Madison Square Garden with a Geo card, taking your lunch with you and that, when you walked out to do that at Madison Square Garden, take me out of this. I'm just asking you this question. As a New Yorker, that had to feel a little bit special.
Well, there are two aspects to the question, and it's a great question. First of all, the first time the Islanders, in their slate of 4 consecutive wins, won it at home, I was in the building at Nassau Coliseum. And that was in an era when the trophies were presented in the major sports in the locker room, not with the fans. And I remember sitting there mesmerized by the moment, never thinking that I would somehow be in that moment somewhere down the line. Okay. If you remember in 94, Neil, it was kind of touch and go in terms of the ultimate result. And I remember thinking to myself, if Vancouver wins in front of all these people who had expected to get the cup after Game 5 and didn't, and then we all had to go back out to Vancouver and come back, I'm not sure what I could say. But you could feel the emotion in the building that after 54 years, these passionate hockey fans were getting to experience a moment that I think is unrivaled in any sport, in part because of the history and tradition and how difficult it is to win the cup. They're all special, though. I don't want to minimize the MSG Ranger moment, but having now presented the cup, what'd you say, 32 times, everyone's different, everyone's unique, and everyone is special. But yes, growing up in New York, I root for the officials to have a good game. I don't want the incidents. I just root for exciting hockey and special moments for our fans, and that was certainly one of them.
And I didn't mean Ranger fan. I meant just Madison Square Garden and a New York kid.
I get it.
Yeah,
well, the world's most famous arena, as it's called. I get it, and it was a long time coming for Ranger fans.
It sure was.
Right? The last time they had won it wasn't even in that building.
No, it certainly wasn't, and it's now been 86 years and only one cup, and you got to present it. Gary, we said this when we did a show about you having your anniversary of being the commissioner. I said this on that show. You have done, I can't imagine anybody could do a better job. I'm not saying that to blow smoke. I'm saying that because I mean it. I've told Vic that. I think that you have taken this league to a place I never thought it could go. So congratulations to you on that. And that's my sincere feelings about you and the job you've done.
Well, thank you. You've always been a good friend. You've always been an important part of the game. But I didn't do this alone. I had incredible support at the Sports Business Journal annual awards. The NHL won League of the Year, which is recognition of everything that's going on. But it isn't me. It's the hundreds of people that work at the league office, the thousands of people that work at the clubs, the players, and the support I get from ownership. It's the ultimate team effort in the ultimate team sport.
Well, and you've been the leader, and there always has to be a leader. And as we know, things don't succeed if they don't have a good leader. So with that, thank you so much for doing this, Gary. Really, it's been an honor. It's our 100th episode. Couldn't have had anybody better than you to be on it. I look forward to seeing you in the future. We just wish you well and thank you.
Thank you. Wishing you all the best for the next 100.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. 100 NHL wraparounds. And of course, Neil, we've done so many other shows with our different franchises, but we really wanted number 100 to be special, and Gary Bettman certainly didn't disappoint.
He's a fantastic guest. He is really an honor the way he answers questions and gives you depth and breadth of an answer. It was really fun, really great, really enlightening. I learned things I didn't know about, and including getting to talk to him about his dad and his nut company.
You caught him off guard with that one.
I did. And you caught him off guard with the French when he presented the trophy in Montreal. So I think he knew we did our research.
Well, the interesting thing about that French reading that he did was he had a little piece of paper in front of him and actually flipped it onto the other side. And the crowd at the Forum really appreciated just the effort to do that.
Well, you remember what Scotty Bowman told us about growing up in Montreal, that the Montreal Maroons were the English team, but Le Club de Canadiens was, of course, the French team. There's a huge French influence still to this day in the Bell Center and around Le Canadien.
So once again, a big thanks for NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman for joining us. And thanks to UBS Financial Services, Inc. NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS Financial Services, Inc., also known as UBS, is a sponsor of NHL Wraparound. No other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and NHL Wraparound or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program. And before we leave, Neil, Another thanks to somebody that has worked for a long time with us behind the scenes, our editor, Werner von Skalkwyk.
Werner is a great guy, has helped us right from the onset of January 30th, 2024 with Wayne Gretzky. He's always been there for us. And I tell you, we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have him. So big thanks to him.
Reach us individually at Neil at NHLWraparound.com or Vic at NHLWraparound.com. We're on all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and YouTube. If you can, leave a review. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, please subscribe. You can also find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, at radiate.tv, and our new partner, Buzzer. That's BZZR.com. Our website is NHLWraparound.com. 100 wraparound episodes. Partner and friend, here's to another 100.
We'll be doing it.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.